Hello, welcome to the Connected Table Live. We're your hosts, Melanie Young and David Ransom, your insatiably curious culinary couple. Today's show is our Thanksgiving special, and we're going locavore. We live in what I'd normally say was New York's verdant Hudson Valley, but we are now in a gorgeous white Thanksgiving, a blanket of snow everywhere we look. We are very excited to have as our guests today Jim Trezise, who is the president of the New York Wine and Grape Foundation in our first segment, and then Jason Grisanti and Jeremy Kidd of Warwick Valley Winery and Distillery in our second. So this is a tribute to New York State. And, you know, if you can make it here, you can make it anywhere, and New York State wineries are making it big. New York is the third largest wine and grape region in the United States, and this month, wine enthusiasts named New York as the wine region of the year. It is a big business also, over $4.8 billion in economic benefits for New York State. 1,631 family vineyards, close to 400 wineries, not quite yet, and $408 million in state and local taxes. So New York wines are not only fantastic, but they're doing a good job helping boosting the New York State economy. And here to talk about all the wonderful things that are happening in New York and its wine regions, its many wine regions, is Jim Trezise. So welcome.
It's great to be here, Melanie. Happy Thanksgiving to you and everyone.
Well, thank you, Jim. Wonderful to have you on the show and get to talk about really what's just become a huge burgeoning industry for New York agriculturally, which is the New York wine industry. We all know it's been around for hundreds of years, and the first bonded winery in the country was in New York State back in the day, and it's been a big industry for a long time, but just in the last 15, 20 years, it's just exploded. And it's so nice to be able to get you on the phone to talk about really what's happening here in New York.
Well, it's my pleasure, and it's really an exciting industry, as you mentioned, and as Melanie mentioned, we're now probably over $5 billion in annual economic impact to the state, simply because the last study that we did was based on 2012 data, and we've grown a lot since then as well. So we're kind of an economic engine and a tremendous value-added industry because we drive the economies for a lot of others as well, including manufacturing, like people who make tanks or barrels or boxes or bottles. Tourism obviously is huge, advertising and others as well. So it's an industry that's very important to the state economy. And fortunately, we now have a governor and legislators who understand that. So they have been very, very supportive of the industry in a lot of different ways. And as a result, we're now growing more strongly than ever before. And in fact, just in the past 4 years, there have been more than 100 new wineries that have opened up in New York State.
Well, the Taste New York initiative, which we'd like you to talk about because it is fairly significant, that New York Governor Andrew Cuomo has spearheaded, has just really been a boon to all agricultural and food producers in the area and beverage producers. So why don't you talk a little bit about that and how it has impacted the wine industry, and then we'll go into the various regions as well.
It sounds great. Yeah, and it's, Taste New York is something that came out of a wine, beer, spirits, and cider summit. Two of them, actually. The first one was held by the governor in October of 2012. The second one in April of this year. And the first one was what gave birth to Taste New York. And the idea of the program is to create an umbrella for farm-based craft beverages like wine and beer and spirits and cider, but also for foods and for restaurants and everything else, and to get people to start thinking local and drinking local and eating local and so forth. So Taste New York is the umbrella, and as a program, it is everywhere. You actually have Taste New York stores. There are some along the Thruway and over at the Taconic Parkway. There are stores, Taste New York stores at LaGuardia and Kennedy airports. And so there are actual locations where people can go in and look at and buy products that are made in New York. In addition, there have been a lot of Taste New York events. For example, last year's Super Bowl in New York City, there was a Taste New York event. At the PGA tournament in Rochester, there was an event. And now, in addition to that, they have been doing a lot of advertising and promotion under the Taste New York umbrella, and just recently launched a new set of funding that the beverage industries can get access to promote their own products under Taste New York. So it's an omnibus program. It really is great, and it's been working like a charm.
Boy, it sounds like it. Wow. Do other states do this as well, or is New York really leading the way?
New York is leading the way in terms of supporting the beverage industries. And also, it's revolutionary in that there's no other state, including California, that has put them all under the same umbrella. And we salute that. I mean, obviously, I represent the New York wine industry, and some of our people may think that, well, beer, spirits, and cider are competitors, and they're taking away market share and so forth. I don't feel that way at all. I think there are real synergies, and the governor, in any case, has put us all under the same umbrella, and so we have an opportunity to work together, and New York is the only state in which this is happening. And in addition to the promotional activities, there's actually been legislation which the governor, through the State Liquor Authority, initiated that has given us the opportunity to work more closely together. For example, now a winery, let's say, if they want to make distilled spirits or beer or cider, they can make it under their winery roof. You don't have to build a separate building with all the investment, and this, a brewer can do the same thing as well. So production can be consolidated, and we are now able to sell one another's products. So you can go into a winery tasting room and get a New York beer, a New York spirit, New York cider, and so forth. It makes a lot of sense, and we are working together very well.
Well, it makes a lot of sense, and it's interesting because to that point, our second set of guests today on the show are Jason Grisanti and Jeremy Kidd of Warwick Valley Winery, who started a cidery, who started a distillery, all on the same property. So that's a perfect example later on in our show of how this is actually working and working well.
Yeah, and by the way, they're doing a great job. So they're a real.
Oh, they're doing a wonderful job.
Yeah, they're a real beacon for the Hudson Valley.
Yeah, absolutely. And New York State, their Doc's Draft, I think, is sold just about everywhere now. So the cider aspect of it obviously has really taken off for them as well. What I find interesting is that New York has really grasped this, creating a synergy between all of the different industries, because they all are a little bit different from each other. Obviously, the methods are different, the equipment can be different, etc. But New York State is grasping it and saying we need to do this all together, and that's really a great thing for them to be doing. For one reason is because a lot of the product that they use to create, whether it's a wine, a cider, or a spirit, is all grown in New York State anyway. So it crosses even yet another barrier in the agricultural world, because they're getting local products to actually make their product with.
That's exactly right, David. And also, what they did, there was a law called the Farm Winery Act of 1976, many, many years ago, obviously. And what that did is that set the stage to let wineries be small rather than being large. And the way it did it was basically allowing direct sales to consumers, to restaurants, to retailers, and so forth. And over the years, that law has been amended a number of different times to enhance the ability of small wineries to produce efficiently and to market their products. And that Farm Winery Act was pretty much copied with our blessing for the beer, spirits, and cider industries. So now you have a farm cidery license, farm brewery license, farm spirits license, and you're exactly right. They all start at the same place, which is New York soil. And they end up differently in the glass, but they're handcrafted products made by New Yorkers who employ New Yorkers, pay New York taxes. So it's really great when New York consumers buy those products.
And in the case of New York wines, especially, a lot of these vineyards have been around for 100 years and multi-generations of families that have been farming the land and growing the fruit and tending the vineyards. And the Farm Winery Act in 1976 was what enabled them to actually start their own wineries, as opposed to growing the fruit strictly to sell to somebody that was commercially licensed to make wine. So that's really, I think, when New York as a wine industry exploded. And I think at that point it went from a very small amount of wineries up into 3 digits, which is 100 or more. And I think when my family got involved in the wine business, there was something like 150 wineries in New York State in the mid-'80s. And now that it's almost 400, I just see that it's, the growth has been amazing. And the acceptance has been amazing as well.
Absolutely. And what it shows is that, in this industry, there are 2 climates that you have to pay attention to. The first one is the climate outside, because you have to have a good climate to grow good grapes to make good wine, obviously. But people often forget that you have to have a good business climate to grow an industry. And so every time there has been a smart law, like the Farm Winery Act, or in 1984, former Governor Mario Cuomo enacted a set of laws that we lobbied for that basically turned a struggling industry around and made it the fastest growing industry in tourism and agriculture. And now his son Andrew has created a business climate that's the best we've ever had, and so we're just exploding.
Yeah.
Well, what kind of programs does the New York Wine and Grape Foundation do under its umbrella to promote wines? I know your slogan is Uncork New York, and I know you do a big restaurant promotion, correct?
Yeah. Yes, and we have a very multifaceted mandate, basically, and our strategic goal is to have the New York grape and wine industry recognized as a world leader in quality, productivity, and social responsibility. So that basically drives everything that we do.
Right.
And the 2 major areas are research and promotion. We fund about $500,000 a year of research, quality-focused research at Cornell University, which is a world-class institution. And then our promotion program focuses on wine in a lot of different ways. We have basically a 2-part strategy, which is bring the people to the wine and take the wine to the people. So bring the people to the wine means tourism. So we want to bring people out to the Long Island, Hudson Valley, Finger Lakes, other wine regions in the state so they can see for themselves where the grapes are grown, where the wine is made, meet the people, taste the wines right where they're made. And then the take the wines to the people is programs that we have in the urban markets, one of which right now is tremendously successful. It's called New York Drinks New York, and it's focused entirely on getting New York wines from the different regions into New York City in a meaningful way, and it has exceeded our expectations. So now it's so much easier to find New York wines in New York restaurants and stores than it ever has been.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because I do a lot of work and a lot of interviewing in my journalism side with a lot of the sommeliers in New York. And so many of them talk about, when I say, what's your go-to wine these days, or what are you looking for on your list? So many of them are mentioning New York wines. And it's so great to see, because for so long, New York City didn't want to think about New York wine. They thought about France. They thought about California. The industry, as a global industry, was much smaller then, and that's where the wines that they knew came from. But as New York was trying to knock on the door, it was really a tough sell for a long time, and it's not anymore. And I think that's just a great boon to what your programs are doing to get the people that are making the decisions and selling the wine to the customer to think about New York wines. And they really are now. I see it all the time in New York.
Yeah, that's great. And I call it the 30-year overnight success.
Well,
isn't that the truth?
We've been working at it for a long time. Yeah, I'm sorry, Melanie.
Truly, fortunately, I think a lot of it's also because we've gotten very, locavore, and everybody wants to support local, thank goodness, after all these years. But truly, I don't understand, if you were a restaurateur in New York, why you wouldn't want to have at least one New York wine on your list as just to be patriotic. If anything, to me, that should be just something that should happen. And I always wondered why it didn't happen enough, really.
I think let me answer this, Jim. I think a lot of it, from my experience, I think a lot of it came with the the availability of New York wines. A lot of the producers were small productions, so they just didn't have the bandwidth to get it into stores and restaurants outside their local area or even the winery. But as the industry grows and people start producing more wine, then it becomes more readily available.
Yes, I totally agree, David. And to me, it's really been a matter of quality, which has really zoomed in the past decade to 15 years. I mean, New York wines now are among the best in the world in certain categories like Riesling and the Long Island Merlots and so forth. So the quality is there, and the restaurateurs now can rely on that. And then also distribution. You're right. Quantity and distribution were major problems for a long time, but now we have a couple dozen really top quality wineries that have good distribution in New York City, so that if somebody puts it on their list and their customers like it, they know they're going to be able to get it and maintain that list. So, there are a lot of pieces to the puzzle that make things work, and fortunately, we're pretty much taking all the pieces and putting them together.
Well, I think it's one of the biggest testaments that I heard as to New York has arrived. That concept was earlier this year, and I'd love for you to tell us your take on it, was an announcement in January that Paul Hobbs, the great California winemaker, and Johannes Selbach from Germany announced that they were planning to build a winery in New York's Finger Lakes because they wanted to create a project together, and they had done some research, and they found that New York was the place that they wanted to do it. So two of the biggest names in wine in the world coming to New York to start a winery, not just take one over that had failed or had wanted to change hands, but build one from scratch. And I mean, that's just a huge feather in the cap for New York to have these names come and invest in the New York wine industry. How is that helping you, A, with your job in promotion, and B, and how is it helping the perception of New York wines right now?
In both cases, it's helping a great deal. It basically legitimizes the Finger Lakes in particular, and New York in general, as a world-class wine region. As you say, these are two of the iconic winemakers in the world who are partnering in a place that has been working very hard for a long time to get respect. I mean, we used to be the Rodney Dangerfield of the wine world. We didn't get no respect, and people have been working really hard. And, when Paul Hobbs and Johannes Selbach say, this is where we're going, then you know that we've made some real progress. It's sort of akin to the Wine Region of the Year award from Wine Enthusiast magazine, that all of a sudden we're getting all kinds of recognition from all kinds of places. But this really has made people stand up and take notice, and I think it will probably be the beginning of a trend. I don't think they'll be the last world-class winemakers to locate here. So it's a real tribute to the people who have been here working so hard for so long. The really great winemakers we have here, Johannes Reinhardt and Peter Bell and Dave Whiting and a bunch of others as well, that have put us on the map in terms of quality.
Yeah. Do you think, it's interesting because there's been such a resurgence in the cocktail movement and the spirits movement and craft spirits in this country. Do you think the resurgence of craft distilling and cideries have helped the wine industry in New York come along in the last few years?
I would say probably the opposite. I think that the continuing explosive growth of the wine industry has helped them in a couple ways. One is to see that you can have a small business in the beverage sector and be successful if you do it the right way. And two is I think they're riding the coattails. There are a lot of people who like wine, but also who like these other beverages as well. And that's why I think there's more synergy than competition among the beverages. But I know, and our beer friends will say as well, that the wine industry provided some coattails for them to really get going on, and that would apply to cider and spirits as well.
It also the New York State agricultural industry also provided a lot of hops for the beer industry to take off as well.
Absolutely, and because of that farm brewery law,
that's
which
right.
It's basically a phase-in, because right now there are not enough hops in New York State to serve the market, so it's like a phase-in where they have to use a certain amount by a certain year. But because of that legislation, all of a sudden, hops are being planted everywhere, so it's good for agriculture and for the land.
Yeah. speaking of everywhere, tell us a little bit about, what are when for so many years the wine industry in New York has been really four main regions, which is New York, which is the Lake Erie region, the Finger Lakes, the Hudson Valley, and Long Island. But it's really expanded beyond that now in the last 10 or maybe 15 years. What's the most exciting region to you in New York now, if you can say that, what's the most expanding region as well? Yeah,
the most exciting region is New York.
Yeah.
Yes,
and
that was a good answer.
I knew you were going to say that.
Let's say expanding.
I'm not, and I say that for a reason. I'm not trying to avoid the issue whatsoever. But what's fascinating is that there are now wineries in 58 out of 62 counties.
That's
wow.
amazing.
Including Manhattan, Brooklyn, and Queens. So
wow.
if you take a look at a county-by-county map of New York State that's shaded to show which counties have wineries, it's all shaded. So you're right, we used to be regional, and it was really even more focused on the Finger Lakes. But now we have 58 out of 62 counties. Now, in the regions that are, and so you've got, wineries up in the Thousand Islands that are growing Minnesota grape varieties that can withstand the cold temperatures.
Right.
You've got them in the Adirondacks. You've got them all over the place. But in terms of growth, I would say that the Finger Lakes continues to be the fastest growing region, simply because it has the most widespread reputation, and there's a whole bunch of land out here that is very inexpensive. Long Island is extremely expensive.
And it's
limited.
And it's a finite amount of land that you can use to actually create vineyards on Long Island, and that's pretty much tapped out at this point. So it's kind of, it's a little bit of a catch-22 for them. Their wines are fabulous, but their ability to grow, at least in real estate, is very limited. Kind of like if listeners are thinking of a region in, say, Italy, it would be Montalcino. They can't plant any more vineyards to make Brunello wine because they don't have any more land that's classified to do it.
And demand is high. I mean, demand is high for several types of wines in Long Island, as we know.
And it's Tuscany, so the real estate's very expensive.
Yeah.
But I think the Finger Lakes, I think you're right. And there's so much you can do in the Finger Lakes because you've got a pretty varied climate depending on where you plant your grapes there, et cetera, et cetera. And there's a lot of different types of grapes that you can grow there, particularly Riesling, Chardonnay, Seyval Blanc, things like that, which all grow very well there and make some wonderful wines.
Yeah, and that's one of the great things about New York as a whole, and the Finger Lakes is a good example, is that the diversity that we have in terms of grape varieties and therefore choices for consumers. And, one of the things that makes New York City one of the most vibrant and exciting cities on the planet is the diversity of its population. People from all over the world, different languages, different cultures, different customs, everything. And so that's what makes it so great. It's not a cookie-cutter place. The same with the New York grape and wine industry. You have the traditional native grapes like Concord and Catawba. You have the French-American hybrids like, Seyval Blanc, Bac Noir. You have Cornell varieties, Traminette. You have the vinifera and so forth. So there's something for every consumer at the different price ranges. And the nice thing is we're making quality wines regardless of grape variety across the board.
Well, I completely agree. I completely agree. We drink New York wine all the time. We also drink New York spirits and New York beer and New York cider all the time, but that's a different story altogether. But we drink New York wine all the time, and there is something for everybody. There's different styles, there's different colors, there's different, there's different everything. And what I think is nice about New York is that it hasn't said we grow this one type of grape very well, and that's what we're going to focus on.
Right.
Although it does do that, it grows things like Riesling and Chardonnay and as I said, Merlot very well. But it has also decided that it grows a lot of other things very well as well. And the winemakers are experimenting. The drinking public is enjoying that experimentation, and it's a very healthy industry right now.
Yeah, and one of the other things I'll say is that for your listeners, if they want to know, well, what's doing well, what are the wines that I should try, they probably know what type of wines they like, but they can go onto our website, which is newyorkwines.org. And there's a section called Awards and Accolades.
Yes.
And you can search it by winery, by type of wine, by wine competition. And there's basically more than 700 gold medal or above wines on there, or scores of 90 and above in wine consumer magazines. So it's a great shopping list for this season.
I also want to repeat that and use this time because we're going to be wrapping up shortly. It's www.newyork, spelled out, wines.org. And you can follow on Twitter at NY Wine Grape FD as in dog N. And your Facebook is facebook.com NY Wine Grape FDN, correct?
Correct.
And just in closing, what would you like to have listeners know? What are your final words of wisdom about the enjoyment of New York wines?
That the best wine is the wine you like best. So, taste a bunch of different ones. Do you like sweet? Do you like dry? Red, white, rosé? And it's the nice thing about going to wineries and sampling the wines is you get to discover not just the wines, but your own taste buds as well. So trust your taste. Try the different wines and buy New York because you're supporting your own economy when you do it.
And you're supporting a lot of wonderful people who work in the area and industry. And we couldn't agree more. And while many people will be having Beaujolais Nouveau for Thanksgiving, we're going to have Nouveau York wines.
I love it.
So
that's the campaign for next year.
Okay.
I assume you're going to have a bottle of New York wine on your table tomorrow as well.
Or two. Yes,
or two, exactly.
Well, Jim, we wish you and your family a fantastic and delicious Thanksgiving. Thank you for taking this time, this very busy time of the year and day, to be on our show.
And thank you very much, and enjoy your wine, enjoy your turkey, and enjoy your friends and family.
And our New York apples, which we're making apple pie soon.
And
cool.
And to you as well, Jim. Thanks so much, and have a happy Thanksgiving.
Okay, cheers.
That was Jim Trezise, who is the president of the New York Wine and Grape Foundation, talking about the economic boon that New York wines is experiencing thanks to legislation that is very supportive of not only the wine industry, but the cidery and distillery industries, which we're going to get into with our next guest. First, a little promotional notification. We are the Connected Table. You can listen to us obviously now, but you can also find us on iHeartRadio.com under shows and personalities where all of our podcasts are available. It's a free download and you can listen to all of them, including last week's episode with Franck Duboeuf of Levan George Duboeuf and Rick Rogers, who wrote the Big Book of Sides. Great book if you're still trying to figure out what you're cooking for tomorrow. Next week, our show will be Linda Gassenheimer, the prolific cookbook author and syndicated food columnist out of Miami. And I'm very excited. Mireille Giuliano, who has a new book out, Paris Oyster. She was the chairman of LVMH Veuve Clicquot for many years, and she wrote French Women Don't Get Fat, and she's going to be a delightful guest. So we hope you tune in next Wednesday and every Wednesday. And please like us on Facebook, The Connected Table, and follow us at Connected Table. We like to connect and be friends with everybody.